On a cold winter morning in 1990, the staff at Pine Valley Hospital faced a situation that would haunt them for years to come. A newborn baby boy, barely 6 hours old, lay peacefully in the nursery while his parents were preparing to leave the hospital, without him. The young couple had just signed papers relinquishing their parental rights, leaving behind their child who had been diagnosed with Down syndrome. Nurse Chen, who had been working in the maternity ward for over 15 years, could barely hold back her tears as she watched the parents walk away. She had seen difficult situations before, but this one struck her particularly hard. The baby, with his bright eyes and gentle demeanor, had already captured the hearts of the hospital staff. "I don't understand," she whispered to her colleague. "He's perfect just the way he is." She gently adjusted the baby's blanket, noticing how he responded to her touch with a subtle smile that seemed to light up his entire face. The news of the abandoned baby spread quickly through the hospital. Social workers were immediately contacted, and the search for a suitable foster family began. But finding a family willing to take in a child with special needs wasn't easy, especially in their small community. Days turned into weeks at the hospital. The baby, who the nurses had started calling Little Angel, became the ward's unofficial mascot. Every staff member took turns spending extra time with him, reading stories, singing lullabies, or simply holding him close. They refused to let him feel unwanted, even for a moment. One particularly memorable evening, Dr. Thompson, the chief pediatrician, was doing his rounds when he noticed something remarkable. Little Angel was tracking movements with his eyes more actively than many other babies his age. He showed a particular fascination with the colorful mobile hanging above his crib, reaching out with determined little fingers whenever it moved. "You know," Dr. Thompson said to Nurse Chen, "this little one has something special. I can see it in the way he fights to achieve even the smallest things. He's going to surprise a lot of people someday." As winter slowly gave way to spring, a ray of hope finally emerged. A couple from a neighboring town had heard about Little Angel through their local church community. They had experience with special needs children and had been waiting for an opportunity to expand their family. When they first visited the hospital, something magical happened. The moment Mrs. Rivera held the baby, he grabbed her finger with his tiny hand and wouldn't let go. Her husband stood beside them, tears welling up in his eyes as he watched their instant connection. "We've been waiting for you," Mrs. Rivera whispered to the baby, her voice thick with emotion. "We've been waiting for you for so long." The adoption process began immediately, but it wasn't without its challenges. There were countless forms to fill out, home studies to complete, and medical evaluations to consider. The Riveras attended every meeting with unwavering determination, their commitment to giving this child a loving home growing stronger with each passing day. During this time, they visited the hospital daily, spending hours getting to know their future son. They learned his routines, his preferences, and even the specific way he liked to be held. Mrs. Rivera took extensive notes about his medical needs and began researching early intervention programs in their area. Mr. Rivera, a high school teacher, started learning everything he could about Down syndrome. He joined online support groups, attended workshops, and connected with other parents of children with Down syndrome. Their preparation was thorough, but more importantly, it was driven by pure love. The hospital staff watched this transformation with joy and relief. What had started as a heart-wrenching abandonment was blossoming into a beautiful story of love and acceptance. Nurse Chen, who had been there from the first day, couldn't help but feel that this was exactly how things were meant to be. Finally, after 3 months of paperwork and preparation, the day arrived for Little Angel to go home with his new family. The Riveras had chosen a name for him that reflected their hopes for his future, David, meaning beloved. As they prepared to leave the hospital, the entire ward gathered to say goodbye to the baby who had touched all their hearts. Dr. Thompson pulled the Riveras aside for one final conversation. "You know," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "many people will tell you what David won't be able to do. But I want you to remember what I've seen in these past months. I've seen a fighter. I've seen a child who connects with people in extraordinary ways. Don't let anyone put limits on his potential." Mrs. Rivera hugged Nurse Chen tightly, both women sharing tears of joy and hope. "Thank you for loving him when we weren't here to do it," she whispered. Mr. Rivera stood proudly holding David, who was dressed in a special outfit they had chosen for this momentous day. As they walked out of the hospital doors, David snuggled safely in his car seat. The spring sunshine seemed to bless their new beginning. The Riveras knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but they were ready to face them together, as a family. What they didn't know then was that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. David would grow up to challenge every preconception about Down syndrome, proving that love, determination, and the right support can overcome any obstacle. But that's a story for another day, the story of how a baby once abandoned would grow up to change countless lives and prove that every life has unlimited potential. The early years in the Rivera household were filled with both challenges and countless moments of joy. David's parents approached each day with unwavering dedication, turning their home into a nurturing environment where their son could thrive. The living room became an impromptu therapy space, with colorful mats spread across the floor and developmental toys carefully chosen to help strengthen David's muscles and coordination. Mrs. Rivera left her job as an accountant to dedicate herself fully to David's care, though she preferred to call it their learning journey together. Every morning began with gentle exercises, singing songs, and playing games that doubled as therapy. She documented every milestone, no matter how small, in a leather-bound journal she kept on her bedside table. "Look, look," she called out one evening when David was 18 months old. Mr. Rivera rushed into the room to find their son pulling himself up to stand, gripping the edge of the coffee table with determined little fingers. They watched, hardly daring to breathe, as David took his first wobbly steps along the table's edge, his face beaming with accomplishment. The local early intervention program became their second home. Twice a week, they worked with a team of therapists who were constantly amazed by David's progress. His speech therapist, Mrs. Patel, often remarked on his exceptional ability to connect with others, even before he could form words. "He has this gift," she would say, watching David interact with other children in the waiting room. "He understands people's emotions in a way that's quite remarkable." But life wasn't without its struggles. Some family members kept their distance, uncomfortable with the situation they didn't understand. Strangers would stare at the park, and some parents would pull their children away when David tried to join their games. These moments cut deep, but the Riveras refused to let negativity overshadow their son's bright spirit. When David was 3, they decided to enroll him in a local preschool program that specialized in inclusive education. The night before his first day, Mr. Rivera sat in David's room long after their bedtime story, watching his son sleep peacefully. "You're going to change minds, little one," he whispered, gently stroking David's hair. "You're going to show them all what's possible." The first few weeks of preschool were challenging. David struggled with new routines and became overwhelmed by the noise and activity. But his teacher, Miss Rodriguez, saw beyond the initial difficulties. She noticed how David would comfort crying classmates, sharing his favorite toy or offering a gentle pat on the back. One particularly memorable day, a new student joined the class. The little girl was shy and refused to leave her mother's side. While the teachers tried various approaches to help her adjust, it was David who finally broke through. He slowly approached her with his favorite picture book, sat down beside her, and began turning pages, making animated gestures about the pictures. Within minutes, the girl was giggling, and soon they were inseparable. "He has this incredible emotional intelligence," Miss Rodriguez told the Riveras during a parent-teacher conference. "David might take longer to learn certain skills, but he teaches all of us something far more valuable every day." By age 4, David had become a beloved figure in their community. The local grocery store keeper always saved orange lollipops for him, his favorite. The librarian knew to expect him every Thursday afternoon for story time, where he would sit in the front row, completely captivated by each tale. But it was at his 5th birthday party that something truly remarkable happened. The Riveras had invited David's entire class, unsure how many would actually come. To their surprise and joy, not only did every child attend, but their parents stayed too, many of them admitting that their perspectives on Down syndrome had completely changed because of David. During the party, David's grandfather, who had initially struggled to accept his grandson's condition, stood up to make an unexpected speech. "I was wrong," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so wrong. This boy has taught me more about love and joy in 5 years than I learned in my entire life. He doesn't need to be fixed or changed. He's perfect exactly as he is." The party became a turning point for many in attendance. Parents began approaching the Riveras, asking how they could help make their community more inclusive. The local playground, which had been neglecting necessary adaptations for children with different abilities, suddenly found itself with a committee of dedicated parents pushing for change. As David continued to grow, his natural affinity for music began to shine through. He would spend hours with his toy piano, creating melodies that seemed to come from somewhere deep within his soul. His parents enrolled him in adaptive music classes, where his teacher quickly noticed his unique talent. "There's something special about the way he feels rhythm," the music teacher explained. "It's like he doesn't just hear the music, he experiences it with his entire being." The Riveras continued to document every achievement, every obstacle overcome, and every heart touched by their son's presence. They knew that each small victory was laying the foundation for something bigger, a story that needed to be told, a message that needed to be shared with the world. As they prepared for David to enter kindergarten, Mrs. Rivera found herself looking through old photos one evening. There was David taking his first steps, David playing with friends at preschool, David performing at his first music recital. Each image told a story of determination, joy, and breaking barriers. "You know," Mr. Rivera said, sitting beside his wife and looking at the photos, "when we first brought him home, we thought we were the ones who would be teaching and helping him. But it turns out, he's the one teaching all of us." Little did they know that David's journey was just beginning. The years ahead would bring challenges they couldn't imagine, but also triumphs that would inspire people far beyond their small community. Their son, once abandoned at birth, was growing into a beacon of hope and possibility, proving that every life has the potential to make a profound impact on the world. David's first day of elementary school arrived with a mix of excitement and nervous energy that filled the Rivera household. At 6 years old, he stood proudly in their driveway, wearing his carefully chosen outfit and a backpack almost as big as he was. His father captured the moment on camera, while Mrs. Rivera tried to hide the tears welling up in her eyes. The local elementary school had never had a student with Down syndrome in their mainstream classes before. While some teachers expressed concerns, the principal, Dr. Garcia, stood firm in her belief that inclusion was the way forward. She had spent the summer working with her staff to ensure they were prepared to provide David with the support he needed while maintaining high expectations for his success. "Different abilities don't mean different potential," she had told her staff during their preparation meetings. "We're not doing David any favors by lowering our expectations. We're here to help him soar." The first semester brought its share of challenges. David struggled with reading and writing, often becoming frustrated when he couldn't keep up with his classmates. But it was during these moments that his true strength began to shine through. Instead of giving up, he would take a deep breath, just as his parents had taught him, and try again. His first-grade teacher, Mrs. Lee, noticed something remarkable about David's approach to learning. While he might take longer to grasp certain concepts, once he understood something, his comprehension was deep and lasting. She began adapting her teaching methods, incorporating more visual and hands-on learning experiences that benefited not just David, but the entire class. "Watch this," Mrs. Lee said one day, calling the Riveras after school. David had been struggling with addition, but she had discovered that when she taught math through music, something clicked. They watched in amazement as David used rhythm and song to solve math problems, teaching his method to other struggling students. By the middle of the year, something unexpected began to happen. David's classmates started adopting his persistence and positive attitude. When someone struggled with a task, they would encourage each other with phrases they had heard David use: "Try again, small steps, we can do hard things." The music teacher, Mr. Yamamoto, became another champion in David's corner. He recognized that David's unique relationship with music went beyond simple enjoyment; it was a form of expression and communication. During the winter concert, he gave David a special role, allowing him to conduct a portion of the performance. The audience watched in awe as this young boy, who some had doubted could even attend regular classes, led his fellow students with perfect rhythm and infectious joy. Not every day was easy. There were still moments of frustration, tears, and setbacks. One particularly difficult period came when David began to notice he was different from his classmates. He came home one day, unusually quiet, and asked his mother why he couldn't read as quickly as the others. Mrs. Rivera sat with him on their backyard swing, the same spot where they had celebrated so many milestones. "You know," she said, gently brushing his hair from his forehead, "every person in this world has their own special way of learning and growing. Your way might be different, but it's no less beautiful." That conversation sparked a new phase in David's journey. With the support of his parents and teachers, he began developing his own learning strategies. He used colored sticky notes to remember sight words, created songs to memorize spelling patterns, and used movement to understand math concepts. By the end of second grade, David had become known throughout the school for his innovative approaches to learning. Teachers from other grades would visit Mrs. Lee's classroom to observe how David's presence had transformed the learning environment. The principal started receiving calls from other schools, asking about their inclusion program. One day, during a parent-teacher conference, Mrs. Lee shared something that brought tears to the Rivera's eyes. "David has taught us more about teaching than any professional development session ever could," she said. "He's shown us that there are countless ways to learn, and every single one of them is valid." The local newspaper caught wind of the positive changes happening at the school. They ran a feature story about David and the school's successful inclusion program. The article caught the attention of education advocates in the state capital, who began using David's story as an example of why inclusive education should be more widely implemented. As third grade approached, David faced new challenges, but also exciting opportunities. The school decided to start a peer mentoring program, and despite his own learning differences, David was chosen to be one of the mentors. His ability to connect with struggling students and his patient, encouraging nature made him a natural choice. "He has this gift," the school counselor explained to his parents. "When David works with other students, he doesn't see their struggles as problems to be fixed. He sees them as puzzles to be solved together. That's something we can't teach, it comes from within." The Riveras continued to document every milestone, every breakthrough, and every moment of growth. Their home office walls were covered with David's artwork, certificates, and photos of his achievements. But more valuable than any certificate were the notes they received from other parents, sharing how David had impacted their children's lives. One mother wrote about how her daughter, who had been struggling with anxiety, had finally found her voice after working with David in the peer mentoring program. Another shared how their son had stopped being embarrassed about his dyslexia after seeing how David approached his own challenges with such openness and determination. As the school year drew to a close, Mr. Rivera found himself reflecting on their journey while watching David practice for the end-of-year musical performance. "You know," he said to his wife, "when we first brought him home, we worried about how the world would treat him. Now, I worry about whether the world is ready for all the changes he's going to make." Little did they know that David's elementary school years were just the beginning. His journey would continue to inspire and challenge perceptions, proving that the greatest limitations we face are often the ones we place on ourselves. The next chapter of his life would bring even more surprises, as David prepared to show the world just how far determination, support, and unconditional love could take someone who society had once deemed limited. The transition to middle school brought new challenges that tested David's resilience in ways his family hadn't anticipated. The familiar comfort of elementary school was replaced by multiple classrooms, different teachers, and a more complex social environment. At 12 years old, David stood at the entrance of Pine Valley Middle School, clutching his schedule with determination in his eyes. The first few weeks were overwhelming. Navigating crowded hallways, managing multiple subjects, and adapting to different teaching styles pushed David outside his comfort zone. But true to his nature, he approached each obstacle with the same quiet determination that had defined his early years. His parents noticed changes in him during this period. David began spending more time at his piano, composing melodies that seemed to capture the complex emotions he sometimes struggled to express in words. His music teacher from elementary school, Mr. Yamamoto, had recommended him for the school's music program, and it became his sanctuary. One autumn afternoon, during practice for the school's music showcase, something extraordinary happened. The regular piano accompanist for the choir fell ill, and David, who had been quietly practicing the pieces on his own, volunteered to step in. The choir director, Mrs. Walsh, hesitated initially but decided to give him a chance. "I've never seen anything quite like it," Mrs. Walsh later told the Riveras. He didn't just play the notes, he anticipated the choir's needs, adjusted his tempo to support struggling singers, and brought out the best in everyone. This moment marked a turning point in David's middle school journey. His musical ability became a bridge, connecting him to his peers in ways that transcended the usual social barriers. Students who had previously kept their distance began seeking him out, asking for help with their musical parts or simply enjoying his company during lunch breaks. But life at middle school wasn't all harmonious. There were still those who saw David's differences before seeing his abilities. A group of 8th graders began making inappropriate comments, and one day, David came home with tears in his eyes after someone had written something cruel on his locker. The Riveras were heartbroken, but before they could contact the school, something unexpected happened. A group of David's classmates, led by students from his music class, had already reported the incident. They created a kindness campaign, covering David's locker with positive messages and spreading awareness about respect and inclusion throughout the school. The school counselor, Dr. Pham, used this as an opportunity to implement a broader anti-bullying program. David, showing remarkable courage, agreed to share his story during school assemblies. Standing at the podium, his voice clear and steady, he spoke about his challenges, his dreams, and the importance of accepting people's differences. "We all have something special to give," he told his fellow students, words practiced countless times with his parents. "Sometimes it just takes a different tune to bring it out." His speech had an unexpected impact. Students from other schools began asking him to speak at their assemblies. Local community groups reached out, wanting to learn more about inclusion from someone who lived it every day. David's story was no longer just about overcoming personal challenges, it was becoming a movement. During this time, David's musical talents continued to flourish. He started taking advanced piano lessons at the local music conservatory, where his instructor, Dr. Chen, recognized something unique in his playing. "David doesn't just play music," Dr. Chen explained to his parents. "He feels it in a way that's rare even among professional musicians. His Down syndrome hasn't limited his musical ability, if anything, it's enhanced his emotional connection to the music." As 8th grade approached, David faced one of his biggest challenges yet. The prestigious Regional Youth Music Festival was announcing its annual competition, and Dr. Chen suggested David should enter. The competition had never had a participant with Down syndrome in its 30-year history. The preparation was intense. David spent hours practicing, working through complex pieces that many had doubted someone with Down syndrome could master. His parents watched in amazement as their son, who sometimes struggled to tie his shoelaces, moved his fingers across the piano keys with incredible precision and grace. The day of the competition arrived with a mix of excitement and nerves. The auditorium was packed with parents, music teachers, and students from across the region. When David's name was called, a hush fell over the crowd. He walked to the grand piano, adjusted his seat just as Dr. Chen had taught him, and took a deep breath. What happened next left the audience speechless. David performed a piece he had composed himself, titled Different Notes, Same Song. The composition told his life story through music, the challenges, the triumphs, the love, and the determination. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the audience erupted in thunderous applause. The judges awarded David first place, not out of sympathy or inclusion, but because his performance had genuinely moved them and demonstrated exceptional musical talent. His victory made headlines in local papers and caught the attention of national organizations advocating for people with Down syndrome. As middle school drew to a close, David had become more than just a student who had overcome obstacles. He had become a pioneer, breaking down barriers and changing perceptions about what was possible for people with Down syndrome. His music teacher from elementary school, Mr. Yamamoto, attended his 8th grade graduation ceremony. "Remember when we first met?" Mr. Yamamoto asked him after the ceremony. "You couldn't reach all the piano keys, but you never let that stop you. Now look at you, you're reaching places no one thought possible." The Riveras knew that high school would bring new challenges, but they also knew that David had developed something more valuable than academic skills. He had developed an unshakable belief in himself and his abilities. The baby who had been abandoned at birth had grown into a young man who was helping to change the world's perception of Down syndrome, one note at a time. As summer approached, David prepared for his next chapter, unaware that his greatest challenges and most inspiring triumphs still lay ahead. His journey was far from over, but he had already proven that limitations are often just challenges waiting to be overcome. High school brought a whole new world of possibilities and challenges for David. At 14, he walked through the doors of Roosevelt High School carrying not just his backpack, but also the weight of expectations. His reputation as a musical prodigy and public speaker had preceded him, creating both opportunities and pressure. The school's music department welcomed him enthusiastically, but David surprised everyone by expressing interest in joining the school's media club as well. "I want to tell other people's stories," he explained to his parents over dinner one evening. "Everyone has something important to share, just like me." The media club advisor, Ms. Zhang, was initially unsure how to accommodate a student with Down syndrome in a technical role. However, David's natural ability to make people feel comfortable during interviews proved invaluable. His genuine interest in others and patient demeanor helped nervous subjects relax in front of the camera. "He has this gift," Ms. Zhang told her colleagues during a staff meeting. "When David interviews someone, they forget about the camera. They forget about their nervousness. They just connect with him." His first major project for the media club was a documentary about the school's custodial staff, the unsung heroes who arrived before dawn and stayed late into the evening. David's interview with Mr. Ramirez, the head custodian who had worked at the school for 30 years, brought tears to viewers' eyes. "Nobody ever asked about my story before," Mr. Ramirez said after watching the finished piece. "But David, he saw me. He really saw me." The documentary won first place in a regional student film festival, but more importantly, it sparked a change in how students treated the custodial staff. Simple gestures like saying thank you and picking up trash became common practice. David had once again proved that his ability to impact others went far beyond any perceived limitations. However, high school also brought new academic challenges. The coursework was more demanding, and David sometimes struggled to keep up. His parents noticed him staying up later, determined to complete assignments that took him longer than his classmates. During one particularly difficult week, Mrs. Rivera found him asleep at his desk, math homework scattered around him. Instead of giving up, David worked with his teachers to develop new learning strategies. His biology teacher, Dr. Powell, discovered that David could memorize complex scientific concepts when they were set to music. Soon, other students were asking to learn his science songs, and study groups formed around his unique learning method. "He's teaching us as much as we're teaching him," Dr. Powell shared during a parent-teacher conference. David's approach to learning has made us rethink how we present information to all students. The real turning point of his freshman year came when the school board announced budget cuts that would affect special education programs. David, now confident in his ability to speak up, asked to address the board meeting. His speech, delivered with quiet conviction, moved many to tears. "Every student deserves the chance to surprise you," he told the board members. "I'm standing here today because people believed in me and gave me the support I needed. Please don't take that opportunity away from others." A video of his speech went viral on social media, catching the attention of state education officials. The resulting publicity and community support not only saved the special education programs but led to increased funding for inclusive education initiatives across the district. David's musical pursuits continued to flourish alongside his advocacy work. He began composing pieces that combined classical elements with modern themes, creating what his music teacher called bridges between worlds. His weekend performances at local retirement homes brought joy to residents and staff alike. One particular performance stood out. A resident with advanced dementia, who hadn't spoken in months, began singing along to David's music. The woman's daughter, a doctor at a prestigious research hospital, was so moved that she began studying the connection between music and neurological conditions, with David's compositions being part of her research. But life wasn't all achievements and breakthroughs. David faced his share of heartbreak when his first crush, a girl from his history class, politely but firmly told him she only saw him as a friend. His parents found him in the backyard that evening, playing a melancholic piece on his portable keyboard. "It hurts," he told his mother simply, showing a mature understanding of his emotions that moved her deeply. The experience, though painful, led David to compose some of his most touching pieces. He channeled his feelings into music that spoke to anyone who had ever felt different or excluded. When he performed these compositions at the school's talent show, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. As his freshman year drew to a close, David received an unexpected invitation. A national organization advocating for people with Down syndrome asked him to be a keynote speaker at their annual conference. The theme was "Breaking Barriers," and they wanted David to share his story. The preparation for the speech consumed his evenings. He worked with his parents and teachers to find the right words to convey his message. "I want them to know that Down syndrome is part of who I am," he explained, "but it's not all that I am." The day of the conference arrived, and David stood before an audience of hundreds, parents, educators, medical professionals, and individuals with Down syndrome. He began his speech not with words, but with music, playing a piece he had composed especially for the occasion. "Life is like this music," he told the audience. "Sometimes we play the wrong notes. Sometimes we lose our rhythm. But that doesn't mean we stop playing. We adjust, we learn, and we keep making music." His words resonated deeply with the audience, particularly with a group of young parents holding babies with Down syndrome. In David, they saw a future full of possibilities for their own children. After his speech, many approached him with tears in their eyes, thanking him for giving them hope. As summer approached, David began preparing for his sophomore year with a new sense of purpose. His journey had already inspired countless others, but he knew there was still more to achieve. The baby who had been abandoned at birth had grown into a young man who was not just surviving but thriving, proving that every life has the potential to make a meaningful impact. Little did he know that his sophomore year would bring challenges that would test his resilience in ways he never expected, but would also lead to his most significant achievements yet. But life wasn't all achievements and breakthroughs. David faced his share of heartbreak when his first crush, a girl from his history class, politely but firmly told him she only saw him as a friend. His parents found him in the backyard that evening, playing a melancholic piece on his portable keyboard. "It hurts," he told his mother simply, showing a mature understanding of his emotions that moved her deeply. The experience, though painful, led David to compose some of his most touching pieces. He channeled his feelings into music that spoke to anyone who had ever felt different or excluded. When he performed these compositions at the school's talent show, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. As his freshman year drew to a close, David received an unexpected invitation. A national organization advocating for people with Down syndrome asked him to be a keynote speaker at their annual conference. The theme was "Breaking Barriers," and they wanted David to share his story. The preparation for the speech consumed his evenings. He worked with his parents and teachers to find the right words to convey his message. "I want them to know that Down syndrome is part of who I am," he explained, "but it's not all that I am." The day of the conference arrived, and David stood before an audience of hundreds, parents, educators, medical professionals, and individuals with Down syndrome. He began his speech not with words, but with music, playing a piece he had composed especially for the occasion. "Life is like this music," he told the audience. "Sometimes we play the wrong notes. Sometimes we lose our rhythm. But that doesn't mean we stop playing. We adjust, we learn, and we keep making music." His words resonated deeply with the audience, particularly with a group of young parents holding babies with Down syndrome. In David, they saw a future full of possibilities for their own children. After his speech, many approached him with tears in their eyes, thanking him for giving them hope. As summer approached, David began preparing for his sophomore year with a new sense of purpose. His journey had already inspired countless others, but he knew there was still more to achieve. The baby who had been abandoned at birth had grown into a young man who was not just surviving but thriving, proving that every life has the potential to make a meaningful impact. Little did he know that his sophomore year would bring challenges that would test his resilience in ways he never expected, but would also lead to his most significant achievements yet. Sophomore year brought unexpected changes to David's life. The summer before school started, his father suffered a minor heart attack, shaking the foundation of their close-knit family. Mr. Rivera's recovery meant he had to step back from his teaching position temporarily, creating both financial and emotional strain on the household. During this challenging time, David revealed a strength that surprised even those who knew him best. He took on more responsibilities at home, learned to cook simple meals, and most importantly, became his father's dedicated rehabilitation partner. Every evening, they would take slow walks around the neighborhood, David patiently matching his father's pace while sharing stories about his day. "You know what, son?" Mr. Rivera said during one of their walks, stopping to catch his breath. "I always thought I was the one teaching you about strength. But now, you're teaching me." The experience sparked something new in David. He began researching heart health and lifestyle changes, creating easy-to-follow charts for his father's medication schedule, and even composing gentle music specifically designed for their exercise sessions. His dedication caught the attention of his father's cardiac rehabilitation team. "Your son's approach to your recovery is remarkable," Dr. Carter told Mr. Rivera during a checkup. "He's combined emotional support with practical help in a way that many healthcare professionals spend years learning to do." At school, David faced his own set of challenges. The advanced music program he'd qualified for demanded more practice time, while his regular classes grew more complex. Some teachers wondered if he should scale back his activities, but David was determined to prove he could handle it all. His solution came in an unexpected form. During a particularly stressful week, he began creating study schedules set to music, using different melodies to help him remember when to study different subjects. Other students noticed his method and asked him to share his technique. What started as a personal coping strategy soon evolved into something bigger. The school counselor, noticing the effectiveness of David's method, asked him to lead a workshop on creative study techniques. Students who had previously struggled with traditional study methods found themselves improving their grades using David's musical memory techniques. "It's like he's found a way to turn everyday challenges into music," one student commented. "And somehow, it makes everything easier to understand." But life had more tests in store for the Rivera family. The medical bills from Mr. Rivera's treatment began piling up, and Mrs. Rivera had to take on extra accounting work. David overheard his parents discussing their financial concerns late one night, and an idea began forming in his mind. He approached his music teacher, Mrs. Walsh, with a proposal. He wanted to organize a benefit concert. Not just any concert, but one that would feature collaborations between students with and without disabilities, proving that music could bridge any gap. The preparation for the concert became a school-wide project. Students from the media club documented the journey, the art department created promotional materials, and the technology club handled the technical aspects. David's ability to bring people together shone brighter than ever. "He doesn't see limitations," Mrs. Walsh observed during rehearsals. "He sees possibilities waiting to be discovered." The night of the concert, the school auditorium was packed. Local businesses had sponsored the event, and a local news channel sent a crew to cover it. But the most meaningful moment came just before the show began, when David visited his father in the audience. "This is for you, Dad," he said, hugging him carefully. "For teaching me that every challenge is just a different kind of music waiting to be played." The concert was a triumph. The collaboration between students of different abilities created something magical, breaking down barriers and challenging preconceptions. The finale featured David performing an original composition titled, "Hearts Beating Together," inspired by his father's recovery journey. The event raised enough money to make a significant dent in the Rivera's medical bills, but its impact went far beyond the financial. It sparked conversations about inclusion and ability throughout the community. Several other schools reached out, wanting to create similar programs. As the school year progressed, David faced a personal challenge that tested his resilience in a different way. A prominent music school expressed interest in having him attend their summer program, but some board members had reservations about accepting a student with Down syndrome. Instead of becoming discouraged, David requested the chance to audition in person. His performance left the board speechless, not just because of his technical skill, but because of the emotional depth he brought to the music. "Music doesn't see chromosomes," he told them afterward, a statement that would later be quoted in music education journals. "It only sees heart and dedication." The summer program accepted him, making him their first student with Down syndrome in the school's 70-year history. This achievement coincided with his father's full return to health, making it a period of double celebration for the Rivera family. As sophomore year drew to a close, David had learned valuable lessons about resilience, family, and the power of turning challenges into opportunities. His father's illness, though frightening, had helped him discover new strengths within himself. The financial struggles had led to a creative solution that brought the community together. During the last week of school, David received a letter from a parent of a child with Down syndrome who had attended the benefit concert. The letter read, "Watching you on stage, my 6-year-old daughter turned to me and said, 'Mommy, I can do anything. Thank you for showing her what's possible.'" This letter joined the growing collection of meaningful memories in the Rivera household, reminders of how far David had come from being the baby abandoned at birth. His journey was proving that challenges, whether physical, emotional, or societal, could be transformed into stepping stones towards something greater. As he prepared for his junior year, David knew that more challenges lay ahead. But he had learned that every obstacle was an opportunity in disguise, every setback a setup for a comeback, and every difficulty a chance to create new music in life's grand symphony. Junior year marked a turning point in David's life, beginning with an unexpected invitation. The prestigious National Youth Leadership Forum reached out, wanting him to participate in their annual conference as both a speaker and performer. The theme was Breaking Barriers, and David's story had caught their attention through his growing social media presence. The invitation sparked a deep conversation in the Rivera household. While honored, David felt a new kind of pressure. "I want to do more than just tell my story," he confided in his parents one evening. "I want to help change the story for others." This revelation led to a bold initiative. Working with his school's computer science club, David began developing an app that would help students with different learning styles study more effectively using music-based memory techniques. His personal experience had shown him how powerful musical learning could be, and he wanted to share this tool with others. The project quickly grew beyond its original scope. Local tech companies, hearing about the initiative through community networks, offered mentorship and resources. What started as a simple app concept evolved into a comprehensive learning platform that could adapt to various learning disabilities and styles. "He's bridging gaps we didn't even know existed," commented one of the tech mentors. David's perspective as someone who's experienced these challenges firsthand brings authenticity to the project that we couldn't achieve otherwise. But the increased visibility also brought new challenges. As David's profile grew, so did the scrutiny. Some questioned whether his achievements were being celebrated simply because of his condition. Others suggested his success might create unrealistic expectations for other individuals with Down syndrome. These criticisms hit hard, but David's response demonstrated his growing maturity. During a particularly pointed interview with a local journalist, he addressed the concerns head-on. "Every person's journey is different," he explained. "My story isn't about what everyone should do, it's about what anyone could do if given the chance." His junior year also brought personal growth in unexpected ways. The school's theater department was producing a musical, and despite his busy schedule, David decided to audition. He landed a supporting role that required him to not just perform music, but also act and dance. The rehearsal process pushed him out of his comfort zone. Learning choreography proved particularly challenging, but David approached it with his characteristic determination. He spent extra hours practicing with the choreographer, breaking down each movement into smaller, manageable steps. "Watch how he problem solves," the choreographer told other cast members. "When something's difficult, he doesn't give up, he finds a different way to approach it." Opening night brought an unexpected twist. The lead actor came down with laryngitis, and David, who had unconsciously memorized everyone's parts while helping them practice their songs, was asked to step in. With just hours to prepare, he delivered a performance that brought the audience to their feet. The show's success led to an invitation from a nearby performing arts center to create a permanent inclusive theater program. David became heavily involved in its development, ensuring it would be accessible to people with various abilities and challenges. Meanwhile, his app project continued to evolve. Beta testing in local schools showed promising results, particularly among students who had previously struggled with traditional learning methods. Educational researchers began documenting the app's impact, leading to presentations at several educational technology conferences. But amid these successes, David faced a personal crossroads. College applications loomed on the horizon, and with them came difficult questions about his future. Many assumed he would focus solely on music, but David had broader aspirations. During a college counseling session, he surprised everyone by expressing interest in studying both music therapy and special education. "I want to combine everything I've learned," he explained. "Music, teaching, technology, they're all parts of the same mission." His counselor warned him about the challenging course load, but David remained undeterred. He began researching universities with strong programs in both fields, particularly those with inclusive education initiatives. The spring semester brought an opportunity that combined all his interests. A children's hospital was looking for someone to develop a music therapy program for their pediatric rehabilitation unit. David's unique combination of musical talent and personal experience made him an ideal candidate for the internship. Working with young patients reminded him of his own early challenges. He developed special techniques for children with different abilities, creating personalized musical exercises that made therapy sessions feel like play rather than work. One young patient, a 7-year-old recovering from a traumatic brain injury, made particular progress under David's guidance. The child's neurologist was so impressed with the results that she began incorporating David's methods into her regular treatment protocols. He has this intuitive understanding of how to reach people through music, the neurologist observed. It's something that can't be taught, it comes from lived experience. As junior year drew to a close, David received news that would change the trajectory of his senior year. His app had been selected as a finalist in a national educational technology competition. The recognition came with a grant to develop the platform further and implement it in schools across the country. During the competition's final presentation, David demonstrated the app's features by teaching the entire audience a complex scientific concept through one of his musical memory techniques. The moment perfectly encapsulated his journey, taking his personal challenges and transforming them into tools that could help others. Success isn't about proving people wrong, he told the judges. It's about proving to yourself that limitations are just starting points for innovation. The Rivera family celebrated these achievements while remaining grounded in their values. They had come a long way from those uncertain days in the hospital when David was first born. Each challenge had strengthened their bonds, each victory had been sweeter for being shared. As summer approached, David began preparing for his senior year with a clear vision of his future. The baby who had been abandoned at birth was now a young man on the cusp of adulthood, ready to expand his impact even further. But his greatest challenge, and most inspiring triumph, still lay ahead in his final year of high school. College acceptance letters started arriving in the spring. David had applied to several universities with strong music therapy and special education programs, but one offer stood out, a full scholarship to a prestigious university that wanted him to help develop their inclusive education initiative. The decision wasn't just about his education, it was about continuing his mission of breaking down barriers and creating opportunities for others. The university's Dean of Education had been following David's work and saw in him the potential to transform their approach to inclusive education. Your experiences and innovations could help reshape how we think about learning differences, the Dean wrote in her letter. We're not just offering you an education, we're inviting you to help create a new educational paradigm. As graduation approached, David faced one final challenge. The school board asked him to be the first student with Down syndrome to deliver a commencement speech in the district's history. The responsibility felt enormous, but David knew exactly what he wanted to say. On graduation day, standing before his peers, teachers, and community, David began his speech not with words, but with music. He played "Choose Love" on a piano that had been brought to the stage, letting the melody tell his story before he spoke. 18 years ago, he began, I was abandoned at birth because someone thought my differences made me less valuable. Today, I stand here because other people chose to see those differences as possibilities. He spoke about the power of acceptance, the importance of believing in oneself, and the endless potential that lies within every person, regardless of their challenges. But his most powerful message came at the end. My birth parents made a choice that could have defined my life, he said. But every day since then, people have been making different choices, choices to support, to believe, to include, and to love. Those are the choices that truly define us. The documentary about David's journey premiered at a local theater the week after graduation. The screening was attended by families, educators, and medical professionals from across the country. Among the audience members were several couples who had recently received prenatal Down syndrome diagnoses. After the screening, one expectant mother approached David with tears in her eyes. We were scared about our baby's diagnosis, she said. But your story has shown us that different doesn't mean less, it just means a different kind of beautiful. As summer began and David prepared for college, he received news that would bring his journey full circle. The hospital where he was born had officially approved his music therapy program for the maternity ward. They also wanted to establish a support center for families of babies with Down syndrome, naming it David's Place. The baby who had been abandoned had grown into a young man who was helping to ensure that no other child would be left behind because of their differences. On the evening before leaving for college, David sat at his piano one last time in his childhood home. As he played, he thought about all the lives that had intersected with his, the nurses who had cared for him, the parents who had chosen him, the teachers who had believed in him, and all the people who had supported his journey. "You know what I've learned," he told his parents later that night. "Our differences aren't obstacles to overcome. They're gifts that help us change the world in our own unique way." The Rivera family knew that college would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they also knew that David was ready. He had not just proven everyone wrong about the limitations of Down syndrome, he had proven everyone right about the limitless potential of the human spirit when nurtured with love, support, and belief. As David's story continued to inspire others, it served as a powerful reminder that every life has value, every person has potential, and every difference has the power to make the world a more beautiful and inclusive place.